and welcome to the regularly scheduled Board of Education meeting, Tuesday, September 7th, 2021. Governor Pritzker moved Illinois into Phase 5 related to the COVID-19 pandemic for all Illinois counties. In accordance with Board Policy 2.230, members of the public may provide public comment at the meeting. The public will be allocated up to 3 minutes per speaker. Board President has set 30 minutes as the length of time for the public comment section of the meeting. The board meetings continue to be live streamed for viewing on the district's website. Electronic public viewing can be found at Board Docs by clicking the video button. At this time, I would ask that the board secretary call the roll, please.
Mrs. Arvanites?
Here.
Mrs. Hostler?
Here.
Mrs. Stufen?
Present.
Mr. Collins?
Yep.
Mr. Kaczynski?
Present.
Mrs. Caforio?
Yes.
Mrs. Troutman? Present.
Okay, all 7 board members are present. If we could please stand for the pledge. To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. So at this time, the item on the agenda is public comments. As was stated, there'll be 30 minutes allocated for public comments with up to 3 minutes per public speaker concerning items on this agenda, as well as communication, petitions, reports from citizens or representatives of other public agencies. We welcome your public comment and appreciate your time in presenting at the meeting. It is our practice to listen, but we do not provide a response or engage in discussion at this time. We ask that you maintain the high standard of being respectful and courteous as you present the content of your comment. In order for the board to hear public comment and conduct the business of the board, this process will be maintained. Please provide your name when you come to the podium, and you will have up to 3 minutes. The board secretary will let you know when you have 30 seconds left. So at this time, if the board secretary could call the first person to the podium.
Charles Casey?
Okay. And just make sure the microphone is on green.
Hello, my name is Charles Casey, and I'm a senior.
We can't hear you, sorry.
Oh, okay, thank you. Hello, my name is Charles Casey, and I'm a senior at York Community High School. I'm here today to talk about bias in the curriculum at York. First of all, I would like to mention that some teachers do their best to present the material in an objective manner. However, it is difficult to do that when the curriculum itself is geared towards shaping students' viewpoints rather than teaching them about critical thinking skills or teaching multiple perspectives. Some of my classmates have spoken about the AP Language and Composition course, and I can attest to the fact that half of the novels in the original syllabus were replaced with more time spent on a unit trying to push a single viewpoint about equity. I'd like to share that this curriculum bias extends beyond just the English department. Specifically, I would like to talk about the United States History course that I took last year. There were a number of biased assignments and inaccurate statements that impacted the quality of the course. The course included questions that represented opinions as facts, then asked the best form of activism to be taken in support of it. To answer that sort of question, you have to take the opinion as a fact, and when you don't agree with the opinion, it's difficult to do that. One of the more jarring things was an assignment in the terrorism unit, which took certain events out of context or retold them entirely in factually inaccurate ways, and it was explicitly geared to make it seem like the real terrorists weren't the Taliban, but the United States, private companies, and for some reason Israel. The entire terrorism unit seemed to focus more on pushing this idea that the real bad guy is the United States, rather than just informing about the time period or encouraging critical thinking. This flaw where the curriculum attempts to teach a specific viewpoint is pervasive throughout many of the English and social studies classes, and is a problem. It alienates students with different viewpoints, and it is very divisive. Teaching that one subjective view is correct does not lead to broadening people's minds. Other students told me they wanted to speak out about this as well, but they were worried their grades would be impacted. No student should have to worry that a different viewpoint on a topic will make them suffer academically, so I'm asking you to look into this and ensure that the curriculum for all classes is objective, so we can make our own decisions on what we believe. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, next speaker.
Paul Nicoley.
My name is Paul. I'm a senior at York, and I would like to start my speech with regards to the AP Lang curriculum with some examples of overtly political articles presented and articles related to social issues. First, The Case for Reparations for Slavery by The Atlantic by Ta-Nehisi Coates. Second, Competing Visions of the American Dream Are Driving Democrats and Republican Voters Apart by The Washington Post. This article name might seem like it is unifying the country or people, but upon reading the article, it demonizes a certain group of voters and a certain group of people within the United States. Third, UIC report Tale of Three Cities. This report used misleading data and one-sided stories to explain disparities from a single point of view. For example, it showed the average earnings of white individuals, black individuals, Hispanic individuals in Chicago. However, it excluded data from Asian Americans and Indian Americans in Chicago. Keep in mind, Asian and Indian Americans make the most out of all those groups on average. In addition to this, President Joe Biden's Inauguration Day video. In addition to this, President Joe Biden's Inauguration Day poem. And on top of this, there is a repeating theme of answering the question of what it's like to be black in America. I find that to be a very odd question because from individual to individual, you're going to get different answers from different experiences. In addition to this question, there were discussion questions including, what does Coates mean, Ta-Nehisi Coates, by people who believe that they are white? What do you believe about your racial identity? Another discussion question that was written with an answer inside of it, why do you think that our police force and criminal justice system are disproportionately harming the lives and bodies of people of color? This question is eliciting an answer. It's not a fair question. That question has an answer inside of it, and if it were worded differently, you would get different responses. Now, these questions are accompanied with sources provided to us, and these sources that are provided to us are not showing both sides. They're showing one side and from one type of source.
30 seconds.
For example, NPR showed a source amongst the fatal shootings amongst black individuals. And it's not a problem that this source was shown, but it's a problem that it wasn't shown with a source that had different data and came to a different conclusion. See, I see two problems here. One, that social, racial, and political issues are being presented in manners that are not fairly representing both sides. Instead, a narrative is being produced. And two, social, racial, and political issues and controversies are being discussed as part of the curriculum.
3 minutes.
It does not matter if a student or parent's views are held left, center, or right. What matters is that it's not the public school's job to teach social, racial, or political issues. That is the parent and guardian's job, along with the individual student's responsibility to educate themselves and form their own opinions.
Thank you. Thank you. Next speaker.
Carolyn Carrillo.
Hi, my name is Carolyn Carrillo, and actually as a follow-up to the comments from the previous meeting, I just wanted to address the board and ask what they were doing concerning the students that brought forward these issues of imbalance in this particular English class. Perhaps the board is not aware, but the Elmhurst Patch did do an article on it. That's available to anyone who has access to the internet. That article also, on the patch itself, that article received 50 comments. That article was posted on a group called Elmhurst, Illinois News and Comment. That group has over 17,000 members. It is a public group that anyone in the world can look at. And Elmhurst is out there, and apparently District 205 has not sought to respond in any sort of manner to the comments from these students that were brought forward. Currently, as I last looked, that post had over 260 comments. Again, over 17,000 people are members, and it's a public group. I would like to highlight a couple of comments that were on those posts. One was from a person named Matt who said, "This is nothing new. His family experienced this over 10 years ago." And a student chimed in and said that she agreed the class was very hyper-focused on segregation and on the idea of being an African American in America today. Again, I don't believe that these students are bringing this forward as something that isn't appropriate for conversation. However, I think that the point of their comments and what the board should be looking at, as well as York and perhaps the other schools in the district, is, are we only as a district allowing one side of the conversation? That seems to be what these students are bringing forward, and I find it very distressing as a taxpayer in Elmhurst for over 25 years that the board has taken 2 weeks now to actually not formally respond. There was an occasion in Glen Ellen where a teacher was brought forward on TikTok for having controversial views, and that was, the board came out right away and said they were looking at that, as well as a case in California. Again, these are public comments that are being made, and I feel that it would be very appropriate for the district to step in and respond in some way.
30
There was also a
seconds.
substitute teacher who said that there was a cutout of a previous presidential candidate that just stayed standing in the room, 6 foot tall, in 8th grade over at Sandburg. So I feel that it would be quite appropriate for the board to publicly state what the policy is on these sorts of issues and what is being done with regard to these students' concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. That it?
There are no more.
All right, we have no more public comment. Thank you. All right.
I didn't know there was a sign up, sorry. Hi, I'm Brian. I have no kids in 205 school district. I had 4, they've all moved on, they're not school age anymore, but I do talk to parents, and there was a parent from Bryan Junior High who has a daughter there, and the first day of class, they had a teacher that had the kids stand up and identify what sex they were and how they wanted to be recognized. And they had choices such as he, she, he, just bizarre. So the girl went home and told her parents, and I just find it, adolescence is confusing enough. And then you bring things like this into school. First of all, it doesn't belong there, especially in a math class. And it's brought up just as it's casual, like that's the way it is. That's not the way it is. Things like that should be handled at home. They shouldn't be brought up at school. No place in school for that. We have school systems across the country, throughout Illinois, that are failing their students. They can't read, they can't write, and then we're going to fill their head with other garbage like this. It's ridiculous. The 2 students back there, I have to second their emotions there with, the critical race teaching, equity. It's just gone too far, and people are watching and they are aware. So with this teacher too, I don't know if that's something that the school system is promoting or if this teacher was acting on their own, but they should be disciplined. And if it is an agenda by the school system, it should be out. It should be taken out. Also, I read a little thing from, I think it was American Studies, called Granta, and it was about some Martians that settled Canada, and they wind up talking some mushrooms and
30 seconds.
30 seconds. And basically, it was depicting that America's bad, borders are bad. It pushed globalization in a one world order and disguised it with mushroom characters and Martians. You know, it was just very bizarre stuff. But I'd like to thank the students that showed up today too. We need more of them here, so thanks.
Thank you. All right. Reports and presentations. School year 21-22, moving forward together, highlights and updates. I'll turn it over to Dr.
I have a little more to say. I think it's important.
What time did we start?
So I readjusted my speech in the middle of it, given the time constraint. However, there's one more point that I'd really like to reiterate, and one more specific example.
30 minutes are not up, so, all right. But
So there was the book that Ta-Nehisi Coates wrote, Between the World and Me, and Ta-Nehisi Coates is someone who believes that America is a racist country. All police are systemically racist, even non-white ones, and speaks with hate towards people who disagree with him. In fact, at one point in the book, he spoke about the brave first responders who lost their lives in 9/11. And this is what he said about them. They were not human to me. Black, white, or whatever. They were menaces of nature. They were the fire, the comet, the storm. I ask you to think about how all the students whose parents are first responders, or they know someone who lost their parents, or know someone who lost their parents during 9/11, or as a first responder, when they were reading that in class, and that this book was approved to be read in class, just how they felt that the school district has allowed that to be in the class. And, you know, that's a huge problem in itself. You know, mind the other issues I presented, but just that fact alone. And then after we read this, there was not like a segment in class to say how bad it was that this person said this. It was largely brushed off. And I remember what my teacher had said to me is, this doesn't have to be your Bible, in this sort of sarcastic tone. Like, that's not addressing the gravity of how bad it is that this person said. So once again, you know, this is pretty serious and it needs to stop. Thank you.
all right, try this again. Reports and presentations.
Okay. Yes. Good evening. And so our next, as we move on to our next segment of our agenda, want again to thank those that have presented our public comments. Now at this time, we have the opportunity as an administrative team to share with our Board of Education as well as our community our moving together highlights and updates. We have consistently used the phrase moving forward together, and that phrase will continue to be language that we will use throughout this entire school year because of the collective as well as the collaborative nature that we want and need to happen within and across our district, involving our staff members, our students, our parents, as well as our community members. I'm really pleased in our presentation today. I think that we will answer several questions that our community as well as our board have asked in order to give a further glimpse and understanding of the start of our school year. We have had a truly remarkable, strong start to the 2021-2022 school year. And in this presentation today, we will share a few highlights of those starts, as well as provide some context and some questions as it relates to the health and the safety within and across our entire school district and within our schools. And I think that will also be extremely helpful for our community to know. As we mentioned, we would monitor our local data, and we will continue to look at our layered mitigations. And so today, during our presentation, several of our team members will share that data and with you. It is important to start out with, again, punctuating our focus areas. Going to our next slide. I know that you all probably have these memorized by now, but it is still worth reiterating and highlighting that our focus has been 5 full days of instruction for all students in all schools. And I want to also add in-person instruction for all students in all schools. There has been an intentionality and a focus on our connection, our communication, and our cultivating of positive relationships. And that's something else that we will give an example of how we are explicitly attending to that. And then we also want to celebrate and the strengths and demonstrate the pride that is within D205 for our students, our staff, as well as our schools. So I am extremely excited to share, and our administration team to share our progress and our updates with our Board of Education on today. I'm going to ask Dr. Grins if you would pick up on our next slide.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Campbell, and thank you, Mr. Gomez, for helping with the slides. I'm going to touch upon a little bit related to learning and innovation, as well as social emotional learning. Oh, thank you. And this is just a quick, we tried to put some vignettes in with these slides to help you see some photos of what the schools are looking like right now. And you'll also see some photos like this one of colleagues engaging in collaboration. Teachers and students, of course, are incredibly excited to be back in person for the 5 full days. Energy, laughter is abundant in the halls, on the playgrounds, and throughout the classroom. So it's just absolutely great to be back in 5 full days in person. As it relates to learning and innovation, you'll see on the slide touching upon relationships, assessments, and our school improvement planning process. Teachers are obviously continuing to build relationships with students now that they're back and the year has started, along with school routines, and that has gone very, very well. We've had a great positive feedback from parents and students at the start of the school year. Alongside that, behind the scenes has also been ongoing formative assessments in the classroom on a daily and weekly basis, as well as the start to 2 of our testing windows, which started last week and the week prior, which are the Fontes and Pinnell Benchmark Assessment System, which is for grades K-5, as well as our Measures of Academic Progress, also known as MAP, which this year is for grades K-8. Both testing windows are still open. They will close in September. One in the middle of September, one towards the end. The MAP growth with NWA will provide a comprehensive evaluation of our students' achievement and growth. It's aligned to standards and would be vertically scaled across pretty much K-8. MAP assessments also are adaptable, which means they move up and below grade levels to accurately identify our students' reading and achievement level. Fontes and Pinnell is going to provide even a deeper dive of our students' independent and instructional reading levels, as well as their reading behaviors. So we are trying to use both together this year to plan for meaningful and then personalized instruction. At York, the Student Services Department is reviewing student grades on a weekly basis across all grade levels. There is additional focus this year by the team at York on our freshman students, specifically our freshman grades and attendance, to make sure that our freshman on track rate is both monitored and celebrated. We've traditionally had a strong freshman on track rate, but we want to make it even better. So that's been a great focus already to start the year. And these trends all taken together, as you'll see on that last bullet, will be disaggregated, and we are going to focus on building what we're calling school profiles that will be helpful tools in the school improvement planning process. That's a little bit similar to the past, but this year with more intentionality, as it relates to getting back into the year and having the 5 full days of in-person. We want to make sure we have the data behind the scenes to celebrate the success and improve where we need to along the way. A few images, again, scattered throughout just to show our students. Again, just the absolute excitement to be back. I know you're not supposed to have favorites, but I do have a favorite up there. And I think it has to be Emerson, which is in the top left with the handprints. But it's only because of the photo. It's not the students or the school. Everyone is doing a great job. I mean that. But I'm sure you have your own along the way. But it is just great to see students, back in circles and groupings, engaging with one another, doing so safely, but just, in that collaborative learning environment, which I think is just a really great thing to see along the way. So again, lots of happiness, lots of laughter along the way. So it's been good. As it relates to SEL, which is our social emotional learning, and the tenet around connection, communication, and positive relationships, this is one of our 3 district-wide priorities this year. And you'll see within that photo, this is our staff. It's at York, but it's a mix of staff that met on the 16th at our kickoff. And they are focused this year on foundational learning as it relates to social emotional learning. And they're planning for curriculum implementation, both short-term and long-term. And part of that is going to be the taking of an inventory of what we're already doing, and then, obviously what we can improve along the way. Last one for me here is, this is sort of our definition we want to provide as it relates to social emotional learning. One of the first parts that we're going to do here with the staff is just having common language around SEL to help us, make sure we are using the same speech, to make sure we're focused on the same skills with the students. We think we have a real opportunity to get that rolled out through Institute Days, through staff newsletters, as well as through our professional learning. I'm going to hand it over to Kevin.
Great. Thank you. So Dr. Grenz talked a little bit about the beginning of the social and emotional learning work. And on that last slide, we talked a little bit about how we are defining that social and emotional learning, but really social and emotional learning is helping students to understand a little bit more about how to be self-aware, manage their own bodies, be responsible decision makers, develop relationship skills, and to develop some social awareness skills. So as Dr. Grenz talked about before, this year we are including that intentionally in our school improvement plan process. And as a part of that process, we are intentionally measuring that. And so our goal is to, we've already, during the first couple of weeks of school, facilitated several lessons in each of our classrooms regarding social emotional learning. And our goal is to facilitate at least one weekly social emotional learning activity in each classroom across the district. And then, as you know, because we've seen several of you there already, curriculum nights have occurred across the district in each of our schools, and those have been really successful so far. So, and then just some images that you can see, pretty typical classrooms across the district in all of our schools, from Churchville and Field and Jackson. Just some students really engaged in learning. And so in the, I don't have favorites, but in the bottom right, really just the importance of relationships to students, and especially at a very, very early age, cannot be understated. And that's something that is really difficult to do virtually. And so we are taking that we take that very seriously and are trying to do much more of that this year. So you will notice that we have updated the Moving Forward Together microsite several times since it was originally launched in August. Some of the most recent Updates to the District 205 microsite include some updated information regarding quarantines from the DuPage County Health Department. So that the board recognizes, so that everybody else knows, there's some information up there regarding what DuPage County currently recognizes with regard to quarantines given current rates of transmission. There is an abundance of information up there about virtual learning and parent guides for early childhood, kindergarten through 5th grade, and 6th through 12th grade. And Dr. Campbell, Dr. Grenz, and I have time on the calendar tomorrow to review that site one more time and to go through it, after receiving feedback from families and from all of you and from others to make sure that it is appropriate and up to date. And then we recently updated information about ventilation practices. So about how air handling systems work in our district and in our schools, and about the routine inspection and maintenance of mechanical systems and changing of air filters, and about how we are encouraging our teachers where possible to open doors and windows when possible to enhance ventilation. So all of that is included on the microsite. Typically, the way that this has worked is that when we are seeing a similar question from parents and families come in over time, we are getting together and formulating a question and then putting it on the microsite. It typically updates on Friday, though we are not always 100% successful with that. So we are working on doing that. And then launching tomorrow at some point is our brand new COVID-19 dashboard and metrics. And this will be a part of the District 205 microsite. There are 3 different parts to the Forward Together microsite and the dashboard. There are going to be links to the DuPage County metrics with an abundance of information there about the metrics related to DuPage County and what those look like, with links to places where people can get additional information if they would like. In the middle will be a link to our localized metrics related to District 205. I'll show you what those look like in just a second. And then on the right is our more localized metrics related to classrooms. So this is the District 205 estimated metrics. We've received a lot of questions regarding this. And so those estimated metrics are really just that, estimated metrics. And so we take those, we know that approximately 91.4% of our students come from Elmhurst, another 6% of our students come from Bensonville, and so on. And so we take the information from the Northwestern University COVID dashboard and weight them appropriately. And then put them on graphs, and those are there for people to review. And all of the information that's typically updated once per day, and then the other information is usually updated once per week. And then last year we did things more by district. This year we are excited to disaggregate the data more by school. And so you will see on the dashboard additional information regarding COVID positive students, the number of students who were quarantined because of a home contact. So they had a situation where maybe a family member tested positive and therefore they needed to quarantine at home, and then the small number of students who are quarantining because they had they were exposed to a student or a staff member at school. And so those are updated. Those will be updated each week on Friday. And so different than last year where they were, it was published in aggregate each week. We decided to make sure that we could disaggregate it by school so that people could really see exactly where the situations were across the district. And so hopefully people will find that helpful. I am sure that there will be many more updates to the dashboard as time goes on after that launches tomorrow. At this point, we are definitely moving forward together. So appreciate your time.
Thank you to Dr. Rubenstein and to Dr. Grins for sharing that. I think that we have, over the course of the start of the school year, have received questions and inquiries as to, the data and how we're looking in terms of our positive cases. And we definitely wanted to make sure that we continue to think about ways to share that information and make that information easily accessible to our families. I think it's really important to highlight that we thought very intentionally as to how our dashboard last year was structured and looked at ways in which we can continue to provide analytics and information that's easy, that's accessible, and quickly accessible to our families. And so I want to thank the community for asking those questions, as well as our board members, as well as the work of our admin team to be responsive, again, echoing that we wanted to present this to our board. And then as we look forward to launching that and making that live beginning tomorrow.
Right. Questions, comments? Athena?
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Grins and Dr. Rubenstein and Keisha for your great work. It's a big presentation. I think mostly thrilled that our kids are back to school, happy, engaged, and ready to learn, just so enthusiastic to learn, and our teachers are too. So thank you to the teachers and principals also, who really did a tremendous job pulling this off. Going back full 5 days with the over 8,000 students is no easy task, given the number of buildings we have and the number of needs that our families have too. So thank you. Big kudos to you for that. I just wanted to go over a few things that highlighting your presentation to make sure they're clearly communicated, and repetition is always a bonus. So I too was very happy at the curriculum nights also. Teachers did a great job explaining curriculum and what the expectations were for students, and how everything from the classroom environment to the social emotional environment was going to work for our kids. So again, thank you for that. I did want to highlight your plan for learning loss, and I'm calling it that because you're using two specific benchmarks with the Fountas and Pinellas and the MAP testing to help you identify where we're at, right, and where students are at. And then, of course, it sounds like you're prepared to offer those supports that students might need if needed. But first, we need the data to see where students are, and then we create the plans to get them where they need to be if needed. Who knows? They may be doing just fine where they're at right now, 3 weeks into the school year. So thank you for that. I did have, if we could just be a little bit more specific around, because according to your chart, which I appreciate the thoroughness on that too, we do have some students who have been quarantined, and I'm happy to see the low numbers, and it's nice to draw the contrast that the numbers are a little bit higher when it comes to quarantining because of things that are happening outside of school. So our number is higher, our quarantine number is higher due to what close contact outside of school. Our numbers are lower when it comes to close contact in school. Really nice to see that low number of 15 over 2 weeks in a district as large as ours. I know some of these are happening in the K-5 school district. We asked, or we had planned to have a K-5 remote teacher to help those students. Can one of you provide us an update on how that, where we're at in the hiring, just so the community is aware?
Yeah, Mr. Pavani, can you please respond to that?
Yes. Oh, here we go. So we actually had our first 2 virtual hires starting today with us at the district office, where we were finishing the onboarding process with them, walking through all the different departments, the expectations. Tomorrow, they will be going to the school, the buildings where they'll be located at, where their classes will be located at. And then on Thursday, they will be able to start working with students that are in quarantine right now. And then we are onboarding 2 additional teachers that we hope the process will be done by the end of the week. So they will start the beginning of next week. So on September 13th, we'll add 2 more. And we're looking to hire 2 more instructors as well.
Oh, wow. To be prepared.
Yes.
In the event that we need to be prepared, right?
Yes.
That's great. So it sounds like that's off to a good start, and we'll transition away from the teacher providing some of that support to kids K through 5 to the
Correct.
remote instructor next week, or
Yes.
this week, sorry.
Correct. Starting
Great.
Thursday.
Great. And I do have just one more question because it comes up often. The shield testing and information around where we're at with that and what our plan is.
Sure. So we are at the very beginning stage. We know that with the recent executive order regarding staff who are not vaccinated being required to be tested at least once per week, we are looking at the possibility of having shield testing on site for adult staff, and then we'll consider additional possibilities from there.
So you're looking at the option. Is there an anticipated kind of when this may happen for the district?
So the shield run update is 4 to 6 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
That's their onboarding schedule. So
Yeah, so 4 to 6 weeks. And then just a final question. And you may not be able to answer this. I might be jumping ahead. What is the intended implementation for shield testing? Optional?
So all of that would need to be decided in conjunction with the board and with the community and all of those other sorts of things. That is a couple steps down the road. Right now, we are sure that we need to implement something for the adult staff who are not vaccinated. And then if we need to move forward after that for additional groups, then we'll consider from there.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for those questions. Just to reiterate and echo that, you know, we, as we continue to be adaptive and responsive, we are putting out the initial inquiry and conversations. And then once we know how and when and engage in conversations with the board, how to best utilize that as, and if that is necessary, to utilize that as another layer of mitigation or not. But again, that will come in consultation with our board team. But thank you for those questions.
So
Yep.
just, are you done?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So just Athena mentioned it a little bit, but in regard to the school improvement plans and then just like the assessment, do you have an estimate or a general estimate when some of that data will be ready?
Yes, actually, we we just extended the window and the due date for schools to complete the school improvement plan. And one of our rationales behind that is really wanting to make sure that we provide the necessary support to school teams. So our actual teaching and learning department is in the process of meeting with each of our school teams individually and providing some support and really asking and looking at what data we currently have available and how future data will fit into identifying what specific goals. Again, we are streamlining our process, and we're creating some consistency, and we're really looking at 3 specific buckets. That's around SEL, around math, as well as ELA. And what we want to make sure is that in this process that, again, our principal leaders have done a phenomenal job, as mentioned, in terms of the start and the focus of our school year. And now we're at the point where we are able to, again, start to sit and really analyze and be strategic in terms of the collection of what data we had from past year, as well as the new data that were being collected at the start of the year. And so we just extended, Dr. Grins, if I'm correct, we just extended that date for the school improvement plans that engage with that data for an additional month. So I think that in terms of looking at and sharing with our board team, we're looking at the end of September, beginning of November, if I am correct with that.
So the last test window closes September 24th. We have an institute on October 8th, so that will give us mid-October to make sure that teams are set at each school, make sure principals know their data, and then we can plan accordingly from there.
Okay, thanks. Karen.
I'm going to say ditto to the thank yous from Athena. And then I'm just going to go into some of the specific questions. And I'll start, I guess, last. So typically we hear about the school improvement plans and the data, what we're looking at, where we are, what our target is, et cetera, in October. So we will get that November, not October? Is that what we're saying? Or am I thinking about two different things here?
No, that's a good goal for us, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, that's definitely a good call. I think we were speaking specifically to the dates that we've set with our leadership team internally in terms of having completed in that process and providing them with the support.
Okay, so I'm going to ask the question a different way. Typically, we get the data in October. Are you saying that we will now this year see it in November versus October at a board meeting?
So we actually were just looking at calendars today. Typically, the SIPs are reviewed with the board in October, high level, with obvious information shared to the extent that it's requested. So that will likely be pushed a month this year into November. So that'll have data with it along with school plans. And it'll be much more focused this year around SEL, ELA, which is English Language Arts, and math, which I think is going to allow us to really celebrate, track, and really focus in on the academics throughout the year.
Okay. I'm looking forward to seeing it because you said you're streamlining it and it's more cohesive from, we've been trying for the last decade. We're a unit district all under one umbrella. That's the beauty of it is can we show where our students are through the trajectory and, that they're really growing with us and we can show that. So I just wanted to get a time frame in my head. Secondly, with respect to that, typically we get data. And I know that, Keisha, when you came on board, you were, we're going to celebrate successes. I'm not sure whether we can put them together or not, so I'm just going to throw that out. Okay, so there's two pieces that I'm thinking about. One is the data itself. Typically, we present it on its own because it's, data heavy and the messaging, what is it telling us? But what I'd like to really see, if we can, and we might have to do it another meeting, but to drill down and give us examples. So as I listen to you, Scott, present here, sounds good, but how is it really working? Give us a snapshot, kind of even high level, but something more than this is what we're doing, if
Sure.
you can.
Yeah, definitely. We can even share some sample goals along the way. That
Or
I think,
successes.
Yeah.
Bring people in, like I think you did last year.
Sure.
Okay. So that's that one. So I'll go to shield testing. We're not, okay, so you said the run-up is 4 to 6 weeks. Has our clock started? Have we engaged that 4 to 6 weeks? Or did you say we haven't done that because you're getting information about it it's adults first.
Yeah.
Might or might not be expanded, and you're going to bring it to us.
Exactly. So we've had our initial conversation. We have we've had received our CLIA waiver, which is necessary in order to administer the Bionex as well as the Shield testing. And we have articulated our interest in order to have those on site with the motivation now currently to provide the additional testing for staff that are unvaccinated. And any additional testing that we want to consider as a team, that's a conversation that we would have as a team. But as of now, no additional thought or plans have been made for that to be used outside of, looking preliminary at the supporting of our staff of unvaccinated.
Okay, because
And the clock the 4 to 6 weeks for us has begun. Mm-hmm.
so
Yes.
we're not
Yeah.
going to delay anything. In case we want to kick it in, we want the time frame to be shorter. Because this is one thought that I have as I think about it is we know that kids in the classroom, every day is number one. But we can't if they have to quarantine or if they have COVID or if they're exposed to it, whatever. But is there a way that we can keep that number small where the kids are not in the classroom? And so that's how I'm thinking about it. Will that buy us that option or not, et cetera. So just to give you FYI, that's what's in my head. That's what I'm thinking. And that's part of the discussion that I would want to determine, is it the right way to go? Because people can't off the cuff think that it's going to produce that, but it's kind of in theory, but in practicality, that's where my head is. Okay. So Kevin, when you talked about the quarantine, thank you so much for the data ahead of time about, where we are with Luke, the hiring. We got 2 people, we got 3, starting in a couple days, I think it is, or next week. I'm sorry, I don't have that detail crisp in my head, but close. And that was quick turnaround from the new order from the state. But today, what does it look like versus I'm calling it the future with these remote teachers. I'm calling it a quarantine academy. Just in my head, like it's, kids will be there, get what they need. Might be several grades together. Okay. Hopefully not. Hopefully the number of kids quarantined is low and is going to stay that way as we get into the fall and the winter and the spring. But today, does it look like that it is teachers providing what the students will miss in the classroom, basically? That's my understanding, but I wanted to clarify, does it look different than that?
Dr. Grants, you want to
Sure.
speak to the outward-facing?
So currently, while we're waiting for the teachers to take over at EC5, the classroom teachers are providing the instructional materials as well as communication with the students. We are not live streaming into the classroom, but they are engaging with the students with regular communication.
Two last questions. With respect to the metrics, I know that it's going to be launching, and there are 3 buckets. Help me understand why we talk about it as estimated metrics in that middle bucket.
Yep. So
Can we call it something different besides estimated, or I don't know. It's like, what is that telling us?
sure. So the metrics in that middle group, the estimated metrics that, as they're currently titled, are based on the data that is gathered from the Northwestern University dashboard. It's a publicly accessible site. The data is brought together every single day at 4:00 p.m. around there. the reason that they are estimated is because of the fact that there might be a greater, Chris has 5 people living in your household, right? So, and there could be a greater number of 5 people households in Elmhurst versus in Bensonville. And that is not taken into account in those metrics, and that is why they're estimated. It's based on our current student population, not on the overall population. So when people say 205, it's not like the overall district population, it's just the student population, and they really are estimates. It's not perfect.
So I might have missed that all last year, seeing it was estimated, because it's the same data, but
Yep, it is the
it's the
same
first
data.
time
Yep,
I saw it
understood.
as, to me, I look at it and I think that's real data though, but
Absolutely,
not
yep.
estimated. So it kind of threw me off.
Yep.
Okay, my last question. I really want to hit all of our students. So I'm thinking about when you were presenting, Scott, and I'm on slide 4 is one example. When we're talking about the learning and innovation and we're bringing in, I'm sorry, it's not 4, it's 8. 4 was with the improvement plans. If you look at 8 and we talk about SEL, I know that, you can look at SEL academically, but then you want to really bring it practical. And what I'm wondering is, as we talk about SEL is, becoming aware and managing self-awareness, self-management, responsible decision-making, relationship skills, and social awareness. If somehow we can help our organization understand that we all need to be socially aware in so many different ways. And we're hearing from students that they are not feeling or are being respected, or that they can't share their awareness, right, or whatever. I just think that we can do a better job and use this as practical examples to try to help all of our students feel like they belong.
Sure.
All of them.
So there is, of course, that's a really great point. I think that, so as there's going to be an explicit social emotional curriculum that is actually taught, but then there are going to be teachable moments, right? When students are learning or reading of Mice and Men, if that is something that is still taught, they're going to be learning about empathy, and they're going to be learning about all of those sorts of things that go along from the character traits in that book, in that particular book. And so, because all of those things are really authentic learning lessons that we need to take advantage of in our curricular units of study. And that is just one of many examples. It's not just in English language arts. There really are examples all across the curriculum. And so absolutely, it is embedded, and we will help our teachers to make sure that that's taken advantage of all throughout.
I just had one quick question regarding testing, since we were talking about that. So I know we had talked about the Binax Now test being used for students that have symptoms in school or possibly come to school with symptoms. Is that something that's already in place, or is that coming?
Yes, actually, we just received our Binax kits within our schools. Actually, last
Thursday. Yep.
Thursday. I was going to say I wanted to give an exact date. And so we have met with we're actually in the process of finishing meeting with our nurses and doing the training. And we look to be able to kick off that implementation of that starting next week. And so, yes, we are on target and on schedule. We and I think on one of the things that we talked about is just really adding and updating the language on our microsite, because we knew that it was going to take some ramp up time in order to receive the test, and also make sure that everyone is well versed in how the procedures and the processes. So we're in the throes of preparing for that and getting everyone up to speed with that. And so that should start within, not next week. We'll definitely be ready to go by the following week.
Just to be clear,
Yeah.
About something, because I want to be uber clear about anything when it comes to testing.
Yes.
In order for the Binax Now to be completed on anybody, adult or child, there needs to be informed consent, not signed by the child. Obviously, there needs to be an adult consent form signed. And so that was an additional piece that we just received on Friday. And so that is all done. And so we'll be rolling that out in the next couple of days. So I don't want any family out there thinking like we're just going to be going out and testing students or anything like that. There shouldn't be any misnomer like that. So.
Yeah, thank you for reiterating that, because that's important. Thank you.
Could you give an example of when you would use the Bionex test, just for, because it's also that it's different than SHIELD, because we were talking about SHIELD testing. So could you give an example of Bionex?
Yeah, so, and it is different than really at-home use. So the Binax Now test is, it is available for purchase over the counter. The way that we are using it, we had to get our own CLIA waiver, which is a waiver from the state and federal government saying that we are actually going to report all of our positive and negative test results. That we're going to follow all sorts of training procedures, those sorts of things. So the way that it's going to be used is that if a student comes to the office with symptoms of COVID, then we would, if we have parent consent, then we would administer the Binax Now test. It is a nasal swab, and it takes 15 minutes. It's a rapid antigen test. And so we get the results back very, very quickly.
Okay, so then that's if someone is at school and they have symptoms, they go down to the nurse, and if their parents have signed a waiver, they could get a Bionex test. Is that
correct?
Correct? Yep. Okay. So then just sort of, is that the same test that if DuPage County would allow us to do it, we could do tests to stay? Or is that a different?
So we'll have to look into this a little bit more. My understanding is that test to stay would be allowed with the SHIELD test. That's my understanding, but I will have to look into that a little bit more.
Okay. All right. So, and I know that you're in contact with DuPage County.
Absolutely.
I asked them some questions as well to find out if they were going to let our county have that option like other counties around us have had, to help keep healthy kids in school. So it's my understanding there's going to be an update for superintendents on Monday. So hopefully there'll be something on that, another tool that we can use to keep our kids in school. So thank you for clarifying when the Bionex is used and so on. All right. Anybody else have? Chris? Sorry, Beth, were you done? Oh. Okay, sorry. Yeah, no, she's.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to confirm that of the kids that we've quarantined, that we're tracking, how many of those turn into positive COVID cases, and that as the weeks unfold, we'll take a look at that data.
Boy, are we there's lots of ways that we are tracking it. Yeah, the data is much more disaggregated this year than last year. Yes.
Okay, got it. And I think obviously 2 weeks is too small of a sample, but I think after a few weeks, it'd be good to take a fresh look at, our experience last year was an extremely low percentage of quarantine kids ended up getting COVID, and just seeing if if that's true this year as well. And just by my rough math, last school year we would have been averaging 150 quarantines a week or ish. So, single digits is good to see in terms of, making progress, keeping kids in school. But I know for those families that are affected, it's their one child that means everything to them. So just everything we can keep doing with data and advocacy to the regulatory bodies, the data is very powerful. So in a few weeks, maybe we can take another look at that. And then we were talking earlier today about just developing a baseline of how many kids are normally out of school sick, before a COVID world happened. I know it's not zero. And I think that'd be really helpful for us when we look at how many kids are out of school, just to think about over the course of, before we got into this environment, what's the norm, particularly as we think about tightening or loosening these policies. That would be a really helpful data point for us to keep in mind. So thank you.
Anybody else? Athena, yeah.
I know we'll be meeting in 2 weeks again, and I just want to put in a little bit of a food for thought when it comes to the shield testing, just as an extra layer of mitigation, going into flu season, who knows? And I just want to put it out there as you and your team work on, I know the focus is on teachers right now, but I wonder if there's any impact if Shield has the ability to take on the capacity for more samples to broaden that. And so I'm hoping that as the team works on their plan, that we're considering what that might look like for teachers and staff, even on an optional basis, just for peace of mind, comfort at school, creating that welcoming academic learning environment.
Is that it? All right, one last thing. Dr. Campbell, I know the microsite's going to be updated. Will you be communicating at all, just sort of I guess I would say a mass communication, so that people who aren't checking regularly will know that, like, the dashboard's up and things like that?
Yes, I will. So I have a actual goal of giving out a mass update communication by this Friday. That will then, we are going to make the dashboard live tomorrow, given the feedback that we've received here. So that's going to come out immediately, but I will send out mass communication, just alerting and notifying our entire community of those updates and those changes to our microsite. Thank you.
Good. All right, anything else? Okay. All right, then thank you for that, all of you. I know that was a team effort. All right, consent agenda. Are there any items that anyone would like to pull from the consent agenda? All right, then could I have a motion for the consent agenda, please?
I move that the Board of Education approve the following consent agenda items: A, personnel report; B, instrument donation; and C, school activity bus bid.
I'll second.
Okay, motion by Mrs. Troutman, second by Mrs. Hassler. Could you please call the vote?
Mr. Kaczynski,
Yes.
Mrs. Troutman,
Yes.
Mrs. Stufen,
Yes.
Mrs. Arvanitis,
Yes.
Mrs. Hassler,
Yes.
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Ms. Caforio.
Yes, 7 ayes, no nays, motion passes. All right, next is the agenda action items. Item A, approve recommendations for daily and permanent substitute rates. Dr. Campbell or Mr. Pavone, could you give a little background?
Sure. We had recently, as a district, we were looking at the rates in comparable districts in DuPage and Cook County. And based on the information from the survey that we had received, this is where we made the present recommendation. We haven't made any adjustments to these rates in the past 3 school years. And this was in an effort just to try to remain competitive with the surrounding area.
Okay. All right. Could I have a motion, please?
I move that the Board of Education approve the proposed increases for the daily sub rate of $120 per day and the permanent sub teacher hourly rate of $23 effective August 23rd, 2021.
Second.
Okay, motion by Mrs. Hassler, second by Mrs. Troutman. I just wanted to say thank you for doing this comparable, and I know we have some other open positions on our website. Are you also looking at some of those to see?
We're looking at every open position and utilizing every resource that we can right now. I have been looking at the DuPage County monthly. They send out information regarding individuals who have just received their sub licensure. So as soon as I get that monthly report, I immediately reach out to all those individuals. So I did reach out to almost 60 individuals a couple weeks ago, and I do this on a monthly basis. We're also doing another upcoming job fair for education assistants over at York High School on Wednesday, September 15th. So we're also looking at those open positions as well.
Okay, awesome. And continuing to doing comparables of all those positions so that, because I know for many reasons, there's a lot of open positions.
Right, and we and I will share with the board soon, within the next week or two. We have personally reached out because there wasn't a recent study done, but we are looking at gathering information for comparable education assistant hourly rates. And so as soon as I receive that information, I'll share that with the board.
Okay. Karen? Oh,
So I know that we've in the past, looked at all these numbers. So thank you for keeping up with that. I know that all districts had a hard time finding people that would come into the schools. Do you think that this is going to help us recruit people? Or are they still?
I mean, that's a very difficult.
If I had a crystal ball,
I was gonna say.
I wondered if you had any insights. Because
if you say it, it will.
It will happen.
I do
Okay.
think
Speak
in
those
certain,
things.
for certain individuals,
Yes.
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 If I'm able to present to the board that we are noticing that our rate might be lower than surrounding areas, and the district in turn starts really looking at that and making another recommendation, it can. But again, in totality, though, over the last 5 to 7 years, all of our districts are having a very hard time with securing education assistant type positions. So.
Okay, so you were referring to education assistants. Okay, how about for the sub situation?
Same with subs. Subs, about the last 5 years, we've had a very difficult time retaining substitutes as well, not just our district, but surrounding districts as well.
Correct. And in the past, we were told that we were quite a bit lower. So that's why I'm asking the question with this new number, which is significantly higher than we've been. Do you think that we'll get the people?
It definitely makes us more competitive. We're not at the top, but it makes us more competitive, though.
Well, and the point is that we have to look at our community too. Yeah.
Correct.
So some communities, they can be at the top.
Right.
Just so that we understand.
Certainly.
We used to have all these conversations. We haven't recently. So just to kind of put it out there. So thank you.
Sure.
Anybody else? Okay, then you can call the vote, please.
Mrs. Stufen,
Yes.
Mr. Kaczynski,
Yes.
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Mrs. Arvanitis,
Yes.
Mrs. Hassler,
Yes.
Mrs. Troutman,
Yes.
and Mrs. Caforio.
Yes, 7 ayes, no nays, motion passes. All right, item B, first read, section 6, instruction policy 6310. If we could get a little bit of background, and then I'll ask for a motion.
So Board Policy 6310 pertains to high school credit. for non-district experiences, and so course substitutions and re-entering of students. While our current policy was reviewed and updated in February of 2020, it continues to include a limitation on the number of credits that a student can take outside of the district. And this, after a closer review, is inconsistent with the press policy. And so within our current situation, we do have a few number of students who have asked to be able to enroll in an accredited program, for example, Illinois Virtual School, at their own expense. That would then allow for students to enroll, but yet in alignment with our curriculum as well as our course credits, be granted credit upon the successful completion of that coursework. So upon review of this current policy, members of the administration team recognize that the actual press policy included a number of additional situations, which should also be included in our board policy. For the clarity and consistency, for example, courses in accredited foreign exchange programs, summer school or community college courses, college or high school courses offering dual credit at both the college and high school level, all of which are examples of situations that we currently obviously support. There are implementing procedures that will ensure that the superintendent or designee have oversight of these areas to ensure that only the appropriate aligned coursework is approved. And so therefore, we would like to recommend that the Board of Education approve the first reading of the updated policy.
Okay, could I have a motion and then we can discuss?
I move that the Board of Education approve the first read of policy 6310 as presented.
I'll second.
Questions, comments? Jim?
Is there a limit on the number of credits that a student could take outside of York High School and have a York diploma?
So I worked on this. So there is currently in our board policy, there is nothing in school code. And that is actually the challenge that we are facing, is that there are some students who would like to enroll virtually for the time being and then come back to us. And we want to respect that for the time being with superintendent designee approval and be able to move forward from there, understanding that places like Illinois Virtual School is an accredited program that we have to accept the courses as the students enroll there, that we have to review the transcripts, those sorts of things.
Okay. Are there, say that York doesn't offer a class in summer school that a student would like to take, but Hinsdale Central does, or Glenbard East does, and they took a summer school class there. Under this new policy, would that credit transfer?
Good. Yeah, I believe that it would allow them to do that. And so what this updated policy really forces us to do is to make sure that we're being competitive with our neighboring districts, first of all. But second of all, it makes sure that we are aligning our current practices with what board policy actually looks like. So you'll see in the updated policy, work-related training at manufacturing facilities or agencies in a tech prep program. that's something specifically that we already do that should have been in board policy that we didn't have enumerated in board policy already, which is why we needed to update this policy.
Okay. All right, then I want to say thank you for bringing us into the 21st century. This is a policy that has been out of line with reality for the past decade, that we limited the number of courses that a student could transfer into some minimal number like 2. Yeah. It's not fair to students. It's not fair to our current environment. And it was basically a jobs program. So thank you for bringing us into modern times.
And I would like to also acknowledge that, this normally our policy would first go to our committee, policy committee for review. And after we saw the urgency of how this can impact our students currently, that's why we thought that it was really important to bring it to the board right away for the first read. So.
We need to recognize that we can't be all things to all people, but if people can learn material from another source besides District 205, they should be able to bring that knowledge and get credit for it into our school district. So thank you.
Just to kind of add on, is there are you putting in a procedure of oversight that'll be really clear that sort of everyone would be able, I like clarity, and while there's policy, then
Yes.
the procedure is as important as the policy.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. All right. Because, I'm assuming someone else is, okay. All right, good. Beth?
And then, just along with the procedure, just for families to have this information, to know that these things are available, because it might be something that families aren't aware of. So that would be great. I agree that it's important to update policies like these and keep the information current with all of the opportunities that are available to our students. And, this gives our staff guidance and flexibility to look at each student as an individual and help them to pursue the things that they're passionate about, and support them in doing that. So I thank you for bringing this to us.
It opens up especially some electives, that's excellent. Okay. Anybody else? All right, you can call the vote.
Can I ask who seconded? Because I didn't. Okay, thank you. Mrs. Troutman?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mrs. Hassler?
Yes.
Mrs. Arvanitis?
Yes.
Mrs. Stufen?
Yes.
Mr. Kaczynski?
Yes.
And Mrs. Caforio?
Yes, 7 ayes, no nays, motion passes. Okay, next is board communications. Board members present reports or share information to the full board. Okay. All right, then upcoming meetings, September 21st, 2021, regularly scheduled Board of Education meeting at 7 o'clock here in District 205 Center. October 12th, 2021, regularly scheduled Board of Education meeting at 7 o'clock here in District 205 Center. October 26th, 2021, regularly scheduled Board of Education meeting in District 205 Center at 7 o'clock. So apparently it has been pointed out that I need to ask for a voice vote to adjourn. So so I would like to now ask for a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
And I need a second.
I'll second.
And then a voice vote. All in favor of adjourning?
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
All right, we are adjourned. Thank you. And good night.